Now, media restrictions in China have long been criticised in some quarters, but the current journalistic landscape here is much removed from what it was just a few years ago. With China marking its 10th annual National Journalism Day this past weekend, we take a look at China's media and what the future holds for both Chinese and foreign journalists reporting inside the country.
The past decade of honoring journalists in China has seen its share of ups and downs, from China being accused of suppressing information about the SARS outbreak in 2003 to praise from many for its media openness in the run-up to and during last year's Olympics. Many journalists in China have seen a significant improvement in their relationship with the authorities. Chinese journalists, for example, have seen the scope of the issues on which they're allowed to report extended to include investigative reporting on issues previously considered too sensitive for public airing.
In the past, when the media reported news about cases of inequality or injustice, people would think that those were exceptional cases. But now there are more and more reports on cases like that being released.
That's the case not just for independent media outlets like Phoenix, but state media has also increasingly taken a more critical stance on a number of issues in recent years, particularly on regional or local matters. Song also compared today's situation to several years ago when China simply had very few media outlets. Today, the Chinese public has the choice of various newly emerging independent news sources as well as the internet. The president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of China, Scott McDonald, says the Chinese government provided a more open environment for foreign reporters during last year's Olympics. He points out that foreign journalists were allowed to travel around the country without having to get specific permission beforehand, although Tibet was an exception.
The government has also tried to do more news conferences. They've tried to put in place a spokesperson system. Those are all good improvements. But in China, there's always a but on it. There's still a long way to go.
Nobody knows just how long it will be before press freedom becomes a reality in China. And while tremendous strides have been made over the past few years, restrictions still exist here for Chinese journalists that would be unthinkable in many Western countries. And the path has not always been a smooth one. Media controls began to relax during the course of reform and opening up in the 1980s under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. But that all changed abruptly after the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. Under Jiang Zemin in the late 1990s, controls began to be relaxed once again. Today, Chinese media outlets can criticize local governments on issues such as corruption like never before. But there remain certain taboo subjects where criticism of government policy is simply not accepted.
Over the past 10 years, there has been less government control over certain issues. For example, entertainment news is barely controlled. For example, even discussions about pop stars' belly button are okay, but censorship on other issues is even tighter than before.
The consistency with which official rules and regulations are actually enforced varies enormously. These can lead journalists to practice self-censorship on sensitive issues rather than risk falling foul of the authorities. And Chinese journalists who do so can face harsh punishments and lengthy jail spells. This is especially true in the area of what are considered state secrets, the definition of which is notoriously vague. For foreign journalists, the consequences are less severe and more likely to be frustrating, but their Chinese contacts can suffer.
There are still problems with reporters being harassed, stopped from trying to report. There's still big problems with reporters' sources being harassed.
According to annual data released by the Committee to Protect Journalists, China has imprisoned more journalists than any other country for the 10th consecutive year. But as China's role in the world economy is becoming more visible, so does the demand for accurate information and greater transparency. The role of the internet in China's media has also grown extensively over the past few years, with more than 300 million internet users in the country. China employs a staggering number of people. Some estimates put it as high as 40,000, whose job is to police the web. But some predict that the internet will play a big role in the reform of Chinese media, with Northeast Asia media expert Ashley Ezra saying its absolute control has proven difficult, if not impossible. The road toward press freedom has already been a winding journey and seems set to continue long into the future. But China, it seems, is moving in the right direction. Increased press freedom will not only meet the demands and the needs of society, but it will also mirror continuous progress for China.
China's role in the world, obviously, is growing, and so there's going to be more of a focus for media here, and an open environment would make that better.
Sylvia Gunawan, BOI.